These newborn twins were abandoned in a church. You won't believe who they became when they grew up. For many people, having a child is a blessing that can complete their family, no matter how young they have them. For some, having a child out of wedlock and at an extremely young age can lead them to be rejected by their family out of shame. This was the very real idea that 18-year-old Sarah found herself in when she found out she was pregnant. The young woman met her 18-year-old football player boyfriend named John. It was love at first sight. Like in many relationships, they became intimate but made sure to use protection because neither of them wanted to have children. Unfortunately, the protection did not work and Sarah became pregnant. Having been raised in a very religious family, Sarah was devastated to find out she was pregnant. Her whole life, her family had told her to be careful who she was with and to only give herself to the man she would marry. In the first few weeks, Sarah didn't tell anyone about her situation, not even her faith. But as time went by, her belly started to grow and the young woman knew she would have to tell her family what she had done. One day, Sarah sat down with her family for lunch at the table and finally revealed what had happened. As expected, her family was upset and extremely angry at the news. Her father scolded Sarah and said to the young woman, "What? What kind of joke is this? You're a sinner? How could you shame our family so much?" Her father was a wealthy and traditional man, a businessman named Jacob. Sarah ran to her room and locked herself in to avoid dealing with her parents' disappointment. After a few hours, Sarah's mother, Ava, went to talk to her daughter. The older woman calmed down and realized that Sarah was as scared and shocked as they were. She explained to her mother how she and John loved each other and that they were using protection, trying to be safe. But unfortunately, the protection failed. When she heard the whole story, Ava was very understanding. She understood that accidents like that could happen, as it happened to her and Jacob. Shortly after telling this story to her mother, Sarah asked the older woman how her father was with that news. Ava frowned and told Sarah that he still hadn't calmed down and that it would be best for her to leave him alone for a while. Sad with this revelation, Sarah agreed and promised not to upset her father even more. Finally, Ava asked Sarah if she had told John about the baby yet. The young woman said no, as she was too scared that he would leave her. So her mother told her that she needed to tell him because he had the right to know. After all, the baby was also his. The next day, Sarah called John and asked if he would like to meet her at a local diner. The young man was excited to go, as he loved to meet his girlfriend. Sarah was the first to arrive at the location and sat at one of the tables. The girl was nervous, drinking an orange juice and waiting for her boyfriend to show up soon. John arrived a little later and was excited to see Sarah. He hugged her tightly and kissed her, but his excitement quickly diminished when he realized how nervous and upset Sarah seemed to be. Wanting to make sure everything was okay, he asked his girlfriend what had happened, but he did not expect what she would say next. Sarah told John that she was pregnant and that the baby was definitely his, as he was the only man she had ever been with. John was shocked and didn't say anything for several minutes, which made Sarah panic, although John asked her what they should do. Sarah told him that they needed to come up with a plan, as she did not want to get rid of the baby because of her religion. Regarding her decision, John then asked her how they could have a baby when they both still lived with their parents, were still in school, and soon would be going to college. After talking most of the day and late into the night, John and Sarah came up with the idea of getting a home for themselves so that they would have a safe and stable place to raise the baby. But the problem was how they would pay for the house, as it would be very expensive. Sarah and John were still students, and they only had part-time jobs that didn't give them much money. Realizing they couldn't afford a place on their own, Sarah resigned herself to asking her father for help in getting a home for her and John. The young woman went home and searched for her father. She ended up finding him sitting in his office. However, he wasn't alone, and sitting in a chair in front of him was John's father, Patrick. The girl was surprised to find the two men in the room. Sarah asked her father what was going on. Jacob told her that he had explained her situation to Patrick, and the two had come up with a plan. Sarah would keep the baby, but as soon as it was born, she would give it up for adoption to someone else. Sarah was shocked by her father's idea, as she would never want to give her baby to someone else. She told Jacob this and explained that she and John had their own plan. However, they needed Jacob's help, as they needed him to help them buy a house. The older man scoffed at the idea and told Sarah that he wouldn't put a penny towards a house for the two because they never should have put themselves in this situation in the first place. Jacob then told his daughter that she had two options. She could either give the baby up for adoption or figure out where she and her boyfriend were going to live since she would no longer be welcome in her own home. Upset by the ultimatum, but determined to keep her child, Sarah told her father that she and John would figure it out without them because they wanted to keep the baby. A few weeks later, Sarah decided to drop out of college to get a full-time job. By doing so, she told John that he could stay in school so he could get a better education, which would lead to more job opportunities. After some time, the two young adults managed to find a small house to rent, not in the best area, but it was what they could afford. As the months passed, Sarah's belly grew larger and larger, and it was clear to everyone that she was pregnant. However, one day her mother became suspicious. Seeing how big her daughter's belly had grown, Ava told her that her belly was too big to be just one child. Worried about what her mother had said, Sarah made an appointment with a doctor who revealed that she was actually pregnant with twins. Sarah was shocked because she had no idea how to take care of one child, let alone two. She went home and told John the news. He was excited about having two babies but worried about how they would be able to take care of them on just Sarah's full-time salary and his part-time job. Sarah decided that she was going to talk to her father again, but Jacob told Sarah that the only way he could help her was if she put the babies up for adoption. A few more months passed, and the due date finally arrived. Sarah went into labor early in the morning and was rushed to the local hospital with John by her side the whole time. While waiting in the maternity ward to be ready to give birth, Sarah was shocked to see that not only did her mother come to support her, but her father also came. The young woman was filled with joy and hoped that this meant her father had finally accepted her choice to raise the children. It didn't take long for Sarah to be rushed to the delivery ward to finally have her babies. But just before the doctor went to assist her, Jacob pulled the man aside and did something terrible. He told the doctor that if he declared the baby dead when they were born, he would give the man a lot of money. The doctor, seeing how much Jacob was willing to pay, quickly agreed, as he could retire, and then went into the delivery room. Shortly after Sarah finally gave birth to the babies, when she asked to see her children, the doctor sadly told her that both had been born dead. Sarah was devastated and immediately began to cry uncontrollably. Sarah's father quickly went to a separate room and saw that the twins were well and happy, snuggled in some blankets. The girl's father quickly took the babies and escaped from the hospital. He then traveled to a different town where he abandoned the babies in a church. He left a small note with the two boys saying that their mother had died in childbirth and that they had nowhere to go. 13 years passed, and during that time, Sarah moved on with her life. She and John separated shortly after losing the babies, as John blamed the woman for what had happened to them. Sarah went back to college and graduated in economics. She now had a well-paying job and a beautiful little house to live in. However, every day she wondered what could have happened if her babies had survived. Meanwhile, in another city, two 13-year-old boys sat in their room at an orphanage and talked to an interviewer about their incredible achievements. It turned out that Sarah's boys had grown up and become very successful. The boys, Jake and Liam, the names given to them by the nuns at the orphanage, excelled in school and were actually considered prodigies in the country. Jake excelled in math and science, while Liam was a theater star and one of the best soccer players in the country in his age group. The two boys had many people trying to adopt them. However, they always refused, hoping that their own family would come back for them. That day, when Sarah returned from work, she turned on the news just to see the interview of the two boys, who she knew instantly that she knew, but didn't know from where. In the interview, they explained that they had been given to the orphanage as babies and they didn't know who their mother was, but they would like to meet her. Captivated by what she was seeing, Sarah instantly recognized them. The boys looked like John with pieces of her spread around. She knew in her heart that these children were hers and immediately drove to the orphanage and explained the situation to the nuns. She told them that she had given birth to twins 13 years ago, but she had been told that they were stillborn. Unfortunately, the nuns didn't believe her as she had no proof. Desperate, Sarah called the hospital and asked to speak to the doctor who delivered her babies. She told him that she had found her children in an orphanage, but the nuns wouldn't believe her. She begged the doctor to tell the truth. At first, the doctor refused and stuck to his story, but upon hearing how distraught Sarah was, he finally told her and the nuns what had really happened that day. He explained how Sarah's father had bribed him and continued to bribe everyone at the hospital for years so that no one would speak up. Sarah was heartbroken that her own father had done something so cruel to her. While the nuns thought the story was plausible, they still didn't fully believe the doctor. It was at this point that the doctor told the nuns something that only he would know. He explained that one of the boys had a large birthmark on the bottom of his legs. Shocked, the nuns confirmed that Liam did indeed have a birthmark. Finally, they believed Sarah and the doctor's story. They quickly began filling out all the necessary paperwork so that Sarah could have her children back. When Sarah finally saw her children, she fell to her knees in tears. The two boys were told that she was their real mother and that she never wanted to give them up. Liam and Jake, instantly, ran towards Sarah and started hugging her. Finally, the family was whole again. Sarah took her children back to her home, where she happily helped them settle in. Two very successful boys whom she loved with all her heart. Fate doesn't fail. What an amazing story, right? Let me know what you thought in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories. See you in the next video.